Everyone. This is Erin,
And I'm Nadine.
and this is a very informal, just looks through the grant prospectus, mostly just to familiarise yourself with the sections and to give you a little bit of a roadmap for where we're headed in the unit and the tutorials that are coming up. So this is what the document looks like. It sits in Word at the moment. And there's a few little notes at the front here that we've left about sort of saying you've got some creative license to make the title page, maybe even the formatting of the document kind of represent the essence of the organisation and maybe the program. Certainly, apart from in-text referencing and a reference list, we're not expecting you to conform to APA. So there is sort of the opportunity to make this sort of suit the essence of the organisation or the topic. And in particular, there is an example on the unit site, so you can have a little bit of a look. It's important to note that that one has some different sections. Every single one of these will be a little bit different. We're just asking you to follow this template. So when you see real life examples, just keep in mind that they might be a little bit different from the template you're asked to follow. So Nadine, what have we got first? The About Us section.
Yeah, Erin. So this is the part of the document where the teams need to be giving a sort of a page of information around the actual partner organisation. So, who are they? What do they do? Maybe their underlying philosophy or values. But I think a really important part of this as well is to start to really subtly give the impression or to sort of tell the reader a little bit about the organisation's ability to, or strengths in terms of being able to fulfil or carry out this program or bring it to fruition. So they can be just really little threads along the way, but it's sort of moves beyond a generic sort of about us section to really trying to emphasise, what is it about this organisation that will puts them in good stead to actually be able to carry this out successfully.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so a really nice introduction. No more than one page in length. So
No.
Yeah, great. The evidence base comes next, and that speaks to, I think it keeps building on the need for the particular intervention or program or service, what the benefits will be of addressing that issue. There's lots of skills that students will have to contribute to this one, isn't there?
Absolutely. So, and I don't believe we've got a workshop specific to this section, but really it's about bringing together information, so evidence from the literature, but also using other sources, for example, ABS data or government reports, which present sort of the need for the program, and that also start to move towards giving some indication of why the sort of program ideas that the students are going to propose in the grant prospectus, why they might be helpful as well. So students, this will be an area where they have already got great skills in terms of all those wonderful critical literature reviews that they've done. But again, keeping in mind in this section, I guess, that the people that are going to be reading the prospectus won't necessarily have a psych or research background. So it'll be important to make sure that this is written in a really friendly sort of manner, and thinking about, that they may not understand more complex terminology that around research and psych.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so and we said before, the referencing is in APA, but the formatting of this section can be just that little bit more like a professional report. It doesn't have to have those subheadings and things from APA that sometimes don't jump off the page at you.
Yeah.
And we've also said bullet point lists. If people have a genuine list and they want to draw attention to that, maybe it's the strengths of the organisation or the benefits of addressing this need or something like that, that's okay in here. So it is that little bit freer than the assignments.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and it shouldn't be, again, it shouldn't be a generic lit review. It should be something which is tailored towards the program that's being proposed. So some little threads in there that make some obvious links between the literature or the information that's being presented and the program that's being proposed in the prospectus as well.
Great. Okay. The program description, this is where we really get into what you're hoping to do, the aims, the who, what, when, where kind of stuff. We have some tutorials, some workshop and tutorial time to really sort of explore this, start to write some aims, some outputs and some outcomes as well. Anything that you think, like a hot tip for the program description, or something that we've learned from past years that people should keep in mind?
Just clarity, I think. So, I think setting it out with, what overall, what does this program that we're proposing aim to achieve? So that may be one really clear statement, and then we might have another section which sets out really specifically what the outcomes are. So I think really just it cannot. You're aiming for about a page of information, but I think it's just setting it out really clearly and potentially using dot points, which make it really easy for the reader to see, well, what is this program aiming to achieve? And then what are the outcomes and what are the outputs as well, so that it's really easy for somebody to understand the general gist of what is being proposed.
Yeah, yeah. And I remembered someone said to me, it really is okay if those aims, which are quite, important, because that's something people read first about what you're going to do. If you're redrafting those as you go, and even coming back to them and just checking that they're as well worded and as clear and as consistent with the actual program as possible.
Yeah.
It's okay to redraft them right at the end of this whole process.
Yeah, and I guess probably one thing that I would suggest is that I should be able to read this program description and get a really, really sound understanding of what the program is about. So it may be a good idea to write it and give it to somebody who doesn't know anything about PYB 300 and this project, and just make sure that they can reiterate to you exactly what your program is supposed to be focusing on.
Right. Now the program logic, this sort of sits underneath that program description. It's a funny old thing. It's probably not something students have seen before.
No, but it's really in industry, it's a very common or typical aspect of a grant proposal, and really what it does is tie together in sort of a more graphical sort of form, I suppose, all the key elements of the program. So it tells your story about what you're proposing in a tabular form. So it starts with things like the inputs. So what is your organisation investing in this project? So what resources are they already bringing along? What are the activities? What are the key outputs in terms of what's to be achieved? And what are the outcomes overall in terms of short-term, medium-term and long-term as well? So again, I should be able to look at this table and see how everything links together, and there shouldn't be any disconnect between the activities that you're proposing and the outputs and outcomes that you're hoping to achieve. Yeah, so nice, definitely. This is a way that, and even if you weren't actually applying for a grant, program logics are used in industry just generally in terms of when they're planning programs as well.
No, it's a great skill to have. And I think one of the other checks that we do when we're looking at them as markers is probably looking at the outcomes that are in this program logic table. There's really I think some people like to make them a bit different or fancier than the ones that are in the description. Actually, there needs to be complete alignment. We need to be able to see that when you talked about your aim and gave some outcomes in the program description, that's what we see in program logic as well. There's no need to get more complicated or fancy or different. They should actually align.
Absolutely. Align and clear and simple, I think, so that there's no ambiguity around anything. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And so from there, another aspect that is probably a little bit of text and then a diagram we don't have a template for because it's so idiosyncratic to the project or the program that people are proposing is the service model.
Yep.
I think of the service model as something that describes sort of how people who are going to use your program or service or be influenced by what you're doing, how they come into it. So whether they get referred, whether they're identified by the organisation, whether they see a picture on a bus, how they get into the service or the program, what happens to them in different stages from a lot from their perspective actually, and then if there's an intended exit point, how that happens, under what conditions, what does that look like? And sometimes there's some service models that will even incorporate a little bit of, you might see some value language in here as well. So there's a little bit of, it really is that front facing kind of experience of the service user. Is that, yeah, what would you say about the service?
No, I think that's spot on, Erin. And we've got a workshop that will cover service models in more detail, and we'll be giving some clear examples. And then there's a tutorial as well where the student teams will be supported to sort of work out their service model. But it's the roadmap, I call it. So, you know, how do clients, or how do the target audience come into the service, what happens when they're in that service, and then how do they exit? And sometimes service models can also look at, or may also include, you know, how are you evaluating or that evaluative sort of component as well, in terms of when people leave, what are you hoping that they has been achieved as well?
Yep, absolutely. And there might be outward referral to other services, if that's appropriate. And sometimes service models will show that there's a decision point. Do we exit people to the community, or, you know, or just leave the model, or do we actually, if they're at this threshold, they actually need to be referred to this other service?
Yeah, I think last year I remember back to the student teams, and I think one of the things that came forward for me was that service models are going to be very different. So the service model that one team comes up with and the service model that another team comes up with will look very different. And I think that's a bit daunting at first, that there's not a right or a wrong way necessarily. It's about depicting in a diagram, essentially, you know, how does this happen for the program that you're proposing? And sometimes you can put a little bit of a written blurb with it as well, in terms of explanation.
Yeah, great. Now, the next two sections are all about people. So we've got the team, and then later we've got partnerships and collaborators. In the team, the one thing I always think about is just remembering that you've got staff, but you might also have volunteers that are either already in the organisation, and United Care has loads of volunteers, or it might actually be volunteers that you're recruiting specifically for this, and they may have special skills, or they may be general volunteers. Needing just to be clear about the roles of what people are doing and how that connects to the stages of the program. Is there anything else people should keep in mind, or?
I guess only that we're not expecting students to provide elaborate descriptions of the roles. So I think, you know, if you are recruiting youth workers to facilitate a number of group sessions or something like that, we don't, that's kind of the level that we're looking for. We don't need them to sort of go down and describe specific role position descriptions or anything like that. They can keep it sort of more top surface level, and keeping in mind that the team will probably include existing staff members and volunteers, as well as those that may need to be recruited for this specifically for the program as well. But yeah, there's no tutorial or workshop on it, but it's really about just thinking through, well, who do you need, and what personnel do you need in order to make this work, and, you know, who have you got on board already? And I think when you write for grant applications, it's seen really favourably if you can be shown or demonstrate that you are actually trying to tap into your existing resources as well as new resources as well. That's seen really favourably by the people giving the money. And you know, that also shows to a degree that this program will be sustainable over time if you've already got some existing resources involved.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the sort of almost partner section is the partnerships and collaborations. We've mentioned we don't expect people to be recruiting these collaborators, so they don't need to approach anyone, but just sort of being aware of who's out in the community in terms of other organisations that might have a strength that could contribute to or collaborate in a program, and maybe even leverage that expertise, so you don't have to do it all in the organisation. There might be someone else to partner with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, from the people that who are reviewing the grant applications, being seen to collaborate well is a really good thing. So that's why it's part of a grant prospectus is you know, we want to build strong relationships with others that we and work well with others to create good results. So I think looking at existing partnerships that that the partner may have is always a really good starting point. But also looking around, like if you're proposing that your program will run in a particular geographical location, for example, having a look at the types of partners that may exist around who tie in really nicely with the type of program that you're proposing. And we're not looking for a huge list of collaborations, just some key ones that are more likely to be feasible, I think is the key there.
Yeah, yep. Absolutely. Okay, so we've described the program. We know who's involved. This is sort of the program management side of things starts to come into the next 3 sections. So the program evaluation, I really do feel like students in behavioural science have lots of skills that can contribute to this. It's really about evaluating the success of the program. And there's 2 areas that 2 types of evaluation we want people to be thinking about. Process evaluation is all about, have you actually carried out the fundable activities the way that you planned and in an efficient and effective way?
Yep.
And then the outcome evaluations are more about, have you actually produced the intended change for the population, for the community that you are expecting to produce? And so we're asking people to sort of have maybe one sort of macro question in each of those areas, and they may sort of have some sub questions that sort of help them explore that a little bit. But it's a taster of evaluation here. It's not a full evaluation plan, is it?
No, correct. So that will be something that would come down the track a little bit in sort of teasing that out a little bit more.
Yeah. And I do think when we look at this is the table we've provided, we just want people to use this. There's the indicators of success and the data that you might collect to sort of show that you've been successful in that area. There's a lot of research design experience that can inform that.
Yeah.
And so that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. If you say that, I'm just going to go very basic now, happiness has increased, what you might need to research a scale on happiness. But if you're talking about, we got 80% of the community to attend these sessions, you might need to say that you're going to do a head count at the session, and someone's going to be responsible for managing that data.
Yep, absolutely. So it's horses for courses. So thinking about what is most important to evaluate in both of those sections, and then how we're going to go about it. And I do agree that I think Bachelor of Behavioural Science students are well and truly on their way to be good at evaluation because of all the wonderful research data sort of skills that you gain across the degree. Yep. But there is we've got a workshop and a tute, I think, Erin, as well on the evaluation stuff.
Yeah, which is great, and it gives teams the chance to sit together and do that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Implementation.
Yeah. So this is a really important part, and I think one of the things that's going to be critical for the teams is ensuring that they are proposing a program or an idea that can be up and running within 6 to 12 months. So this is, organisations that are sort of addressing the types of issues that we work with in PYB 300 have to act quickly generally. And so we want to ensure that the grant prospectuses are reflecting that urgency. So the implementation plan is there to help the teams to sort of make sure that they do come up with an idea that can be up and running in that time period. So it's really about breaking the program down into some sort of key tasks like recruitment. If you're attaining property for some reason, you might be looking for existing rental opportunities. If you have to train staff, getting the teams to think about what are all the different tasks or steps that have to occur in order to get this program up and running, and ensuring that what you're suggesting can actually be done in a 6 to 12 month time period so that you can have that program in place and operational within that time. So because it may take, if you want to recruit youth workers or volunteers even, that could take 6 weeks. And so we want the teams to be thinking about the timeline. Because it's a matter of getting these programs up and running ASAP. Yeah.
And should I show, we've got a little bit of an action plan here.
Yeah. So this is just a table that you can use to think about what are the core tasks, the key tasks, the activities that sort of fall within that category. So you might, with recruitment, you might be recruiting youth workers, you might be recruiting volunteers, you might be recruiting drivers, whatever it is. So you would have sort of some key task categories and then the activities within each, and then a bit of a timeline. And what will help students to do is also to produce what we call a Gantt chart, which is more of a colourful sort of depiction of the timeline of each of those activities. So it's a really nice visual of what will happen when, and demonstrate really clearly to somebody reviewing the grant that this actually is achievable within the time frame that's being specified. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's about brainstorming all the different things that have to happen to get this up and running, and making sure that it fits.
Yeah, and look,
time period.
speaking of that, I think the lucky last is always budget.
The budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put up the template because we do have a little bit of a template for students as well in this one.
Yeah. So, because again, you know, we want to make sure that that what you're proposing, what students are proposing, is achievable and feasible. And part of that is making sure that it fits within a budget. And so for this exercise, we've set the budget at $1 million. And while that sounds like a lot, it probably, in the scheme of potential programs, it's, you know, it's probably, you might find that you use that amount of money pretty quickly. But it's about, we know that student teams won't be able to have something super accurate or specific, but what we want is for them to identify or make what we call budget assumptions. So to describe more generally the type or the key expenses that are going to be aligned with the programs that are being proposed, and then put a rough sort of cost associated with that expense, keeping everything to the $1 million sort of mark. So you can see in the table we've just provided, like, if we talk about youth workers again, that we might need a number of youth workers for 15 hours a week for 30 weeks. So I'm just giving a description of that expense. We're going to have 2 workers doing that at the cost of roughly $13,000. And there are some resources you can access online to give you the a rough costing for what employing a youth worker might be. And then in the final column, we've got the overall cost for that expense. So in class, again, we'll take you through the idea of budgeting and the types of expenses that might come into this, you know, building a program such as this one, and walk you through the tasks. So we're not going to throw you in the deep end and go just create a budget. There is a way of doing it, and when you write for a grant application, they're going to be looking for specific things. So we'll make sure that everybody knows what they are and how to cost them out.
Yeah, great. I'm going to stop share there. And so that's fantastic, Nadine. Thank you so much for the walkthrough. Hopefully for teams, that's useful information. There's a summary underneath in this module as well, and can't wait to do some more.
Yeah, no, thanks, Erin. Awesome. I'm really looking forward to working with the teams and reassuring everybody that, you know, there will be lots of support along the way. And so, you know, making the most of the workshops and the tutorials is really important. We'll be there to give you a hand.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.